perfect. Now just a touch more blush," the makeup artist said, adding final touches to my face. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing myself beneath the carefully applied makeup and intricately styled hair. The wedding dress, a beautiful A-line gown with delicate lace details, had been altered 3 times to fit perfectly. I'd lost 20 pounds in the past 6 months, trying to be the bride Steven said he wanted me to be. The butterflies in my stomach weren't just pre-wedding jitters. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. Steven loved me. He'd proven it over our 2-year relationship, hadn't he? Sure, there were the constant comments about my weight, the helpful suggestions about diet plans, and the way he'd wrinkle his nose when I ordered dessert at restaurants. But that was just because he cared about my health, right? My best friend Sarah caught my eye in the mirror. "Phoebe, you look stunning," she said, but I noticed the worry lines around her eyes. Sarah had never fully warmed up to Steven, though she'd tried for my sake. Last week, over coffee, she'd attempted to talk to me about him. "Are you sure about this?" she'd asked. I'd dismissed her concerns, attributing them to her recent divorce making her cynical about marriage. The church bells began to chime. My father appeared at the door, his eyes glistening with tears. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked, offering his arm. I took one last look in the mirror, smoothed my dress, and nodded. The walk down the aisle felt surreal. The church was packed with 300 guests, mostly Steven's friends and business associates. My side was notably smaller, just family and close friends. Steven stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, but something about his expression made my stomach clench. He wasn't looking at me with love or joy. Instead, he was smirking, exchanging glances with his groomsmen who seemed to be suppressing laughter. I should have known then. I should have turned around and run. But I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, clutching my father's arm like a lifeline. When I reached the altar, Steven took my hand. His palm was sweaty, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. The priest began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the church. "Dearly beloved." That's when it happened. Steven dropped my hand and stepped back. The smirk on his face transformed into a full-blown sneer. "You know what? I can't do this," he announced, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "Did you really think I'd marry someone like you?" The church erupted in confused murmurs. I stood frozen, my bouquet trembling in my hands. "This whole thing was a bet," Steven continued, turning to address the crowd rather than me. "The guys bet me $50,000 that I couldn't get the fat girl to fall in love with me and make it all the way to the altar." He turned back to me, his eyes cold. "Thanks for making me richer, Phoebe. Though I have to say, watching you try to squeeze into that dress these past months was almost not worth it." His groomsmen burst into laughter. From the front pew, his mother stood up, her designer dress rustling. "Well, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "you really should have known better. Someone like you should be grateful Steven even pretended to be interested." The world spun around me. Sarah appeared at my side, her arm around my waist, supporting me as my knees threatened to buckle. The murmurs had grown louder, and I could see phones recording the whole humiliating scene. Through my tears, I saw my father step forward, his face red with rage. But before he could reach Steven, I found my voice. "Stop," I said, surprised by how steady it sounded. The church fell silent. "Don't give them the satisfaction, Dad." I turned to Steven, my heart pounding, but my voice remaining calm. "You think you've won something here? You think this makes you powerful, humiliating someone who loved you, who trusted you?" I removed my engagement ring and placed it carefully on the altar. "I feel sorry for you, Steven. Because one day you'll realize what you threw away wasn't a bet. It was the chance to be loved for who you are, not what you look like, or how much money you have." Then I turned and walked back down the aisle, my head held high, despite the tears streaming down my face. Behind me, I could hear Sarah's heels clicking on the church floor as she followed, and my family rising from their pews to join me. I made it to the church steps before the sobs overtook me. Sarah held me as I cried, my carefully applied makeup running down my face. "I'm so stupid," I whispered. "How did I not see this coming?" "You're not stupid," Sarah said firmly. "You're kind and trusting. And he's a monster who took advantage of that. But this isn't the end of your story, Em. It's just the beginning. Little did I know then how right she would be. Because the next morning, Stephen would show up at my door with tears in his eyes and a story that would change everything. The morning after my wedding disaster, I sat in Sarah's kitchen, still wearing her oversized pajamas. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with messages, some sympathetic, others gleefully sharing videos of my humiliation. The incident had already gone viral on social media. An wedding bet was trending locally. "You should eat something," Sarah insisted, sliding a plate of toast across the counter. I stared at it, remembering all the times Stephen had commented on my food choices. Even now, his voice echoed in my head. "Do you really need that?" The doorbell rang. Sarah checked her security camera and her face hardened. "It's him. Stephen!" My heart lurched. "I'll tell him to leave." Sarah started toward the door, but I caught her arm. "No, I need to face him." Stephen stood on the porch, looking nothing like the cruel man from yesterday. His designer suit was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. When he saw me, he started crying. Actually crying. "Phoebe, please," he choked out. "I need to tell you something. It's about my mother." Sarah positioned herself between us. "You have some nerve showing up here." "Please," he repeated. 5 minutes. What I did was unforgivable, but there's something you need to know. I nodded slowly. 5 minutes. We sat in Sarah's living room. Stephen perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa, while Sarah stood guard by the door, arms crossed. "My mother's been diagnosed with terminal cancer," he began. "Stage 4 pancreatic. She has maybe 3 months left." I felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly squashed by remembered humiliation. "That doesn't excuse—" "No, it doesn't," he interrupted. "But you need to understand, the bet wasn't real. There was no $50,000. It was all my mother's idea." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What?" "She found out about her diagnosis 6 months ago. Instead of accepting it, she became obsessed with making sure I married the right kind of woman before she died. When I told her about you, about how happy you made me, He swallowed hard. She threatened to change her will, to leave everything to my cousin Richard unless I proved I wasn't serious about you. By humiliating me at the altar?" My voice cracked. "She said if I really loved her, I'd do this one last thing for her. She arranged everything. The groomsmen were all in on it, the video recordings, even the social media campaign. She wanted to make sure I could never go back to you." His shoulders shook. "I was a coward. I chose my inheritance over your heart, and I will never forgive myself." Sarah snorted. "So you're still just as pathetic, just for a different reason." But I was remembering things. The way Stephen's behavior had changed in the past 6 months. The increasing pressure about my appearance coinciding with his mother's timeline. The constant presence of his mother at dress fittings. Her thinly veiled comments. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because last night, after everything, I went home and found my mother celebrating. Not just the wedding disaster. She was celebrating with Richard. They were watching the videos, laughing, and I heard them talking about their plan. The cancer is a lie. All of it was a test, not just of you, but of me, to see how far I would go for money. And I failed. I failed as a human being." He pulled out his phone and played a recording. His mother's distinctive voice filled the room, slightly slurred from champagne. "Of course there's no cancer, darling. But now we know Stephen will do anything for his inheritance. He's proven himself just as manipulative as his father, perfect for taking over the company." The silence that followed was deafening. "I've already sent this recording to my lawyer," Stephen continued. "I'm going to expose everything. The manipulation, the lies, the whole toxic empire my family built. I'll probably lose everything, but I deserve to. I needed you to know that I really did love you, Phoebe. And I destroyed it because I was too weak to stand up to my mother." I looked at this broken man before me, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say I understood. But Sarah's words from last night echoed in my head. "This isn't the end of your story. Thank you for telling me the truth," I said finally. "But it doesn't change what happened. You had a choice, Stephen. You chose your mother's approval and money over my heart. Whether it was for $50,000 or $50 million doesn't matter. I know, he whispered. I just hope someday you can forgive me. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. There's something else you should know. My mother, she's planning something. I heard her on the phone this morning, talking about making sure you'd never recover from this. Whatever she's doing, it's not over. Please be careful. After he left, Sarah pulled me into a hug. Are you okay? No, I answered honestly. But I will be. I pulled back, wiping my eyes. Sarah, I need your help with something. Anything. I need to find out what his mother is planning. And then, I took a deep breath. I need to make sure she doesn't win. Little did I know, as I sat there in Sarah's living room plotting my next move, that Stephen's mother had already set her plan in motion. And it would force me to confront not just her, but every insecurity, every doubt, and every fear I'd ever had about myself. Stephen's mother's plan revealed itself 3 days after the wedding, while I was still hiding at Sarah's house. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. Phoebe, we need to talk. Now. I found myself sitting in her office an hour later, staring at printouts of emails spread across her desk. Emails that appeared to be from me, containing confidential client information sent to our biggest competitors. The timestamps showed they'd been sent gradually over the past year. These were forwarded to me by Victoria Hamilton, my boss said, naming Stephen's mother. She expressed concern about your professional ethics. My hands shook as I examined the emails. These aren't mine. I never sent these. They came from your work account, Phoebe. Someone must have accessed it. Please, you know me. I've worked here for 5 years. She sighed. I do know you. That's why this is so disappointing. Victoria also provided evidence of insider trading using your credentials. The SEC has been notified? The room spun. Victoria Hamilton hadn't just wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to destroy me completely. My career, my reputation, everything I'd built independently of Stephen. I left the office in a daze, carrying a box with my personal items. Security escorted me out as colleagues watched, whispering. My phone buzzed again, my bank app warning of suspicious activity. When I checked my account, my blood ran cold. 0 balance. Everything was gone. Standing on the sidewalk, clutching my box of office supplies, I should have felt defeated. Instead, something else stirred inside me. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. I called Sarah. Remember when you handled that cybersecurity case last year? The one with the corporate espionage? Why? I need your contact. The ethical hacker. Marcus? Phoebe? What's going on? I told her everything. She listened, then said, I'll call him. But this is bigger than just hacking. You need a lawyer. I need more than that, I replied. I need to understand how Victoria thinks, and I know exactly who can help with that. An hour later, I sat in a small cafe, facing Stephen's ex-fiancée, Diana. She'd agreed to meet after I messaged her on LinkedIn. 5 years ago, she'd walked away from Stephen 2 months before their wedding, causing a scandal in their social circle. Now I understood why. Victoria did the same thing to me, Diana said, stirring her coffee. Different method, same goal. In my case, she planted drugs in my desk at work. When that didn't stick, she started rumors about me sleeping with board members. Classic stuff. Why didn't you fight back? Diana laughed bitterly. With what resources? She froze my accounts, blacklisted me in my industry. I had to move to Seattle and start over. She leaned forward. But you might actually have a chance. Why? Because you have something I didn't. Proof. She pulled out her phone, showing me an email. Stephen sent me this morning's recording, the one about the fake cancer story. That's gold. But more importantly, she smiled. You have me. I've spent 5 years documenting everything Victoria's done, to me, to others. I just needed someone with the guts to use it. My heart raced. Why help me? Because Victoria Hamilton has destroyed enough lives. And because, Diana hesitated. Stephen never stood up for me, but he stood up for you. That means something. As Diana shared her files, records, testimonies, patterns of destruction spanning decades, A plan began forming in my mind. Victoria had power, money, and influence, but I had something she'd never expect. Nothing left to lose. "There's one more thing," Diana said as we finished. "Victoria has a weak spot. The Hamilton Foundation's annual gala is next week. It's her pride and joy, where she parades her power in front of all of high society. And thanks to your viral wedding video," Diana smiled, "you're the talk of the town. Everyone will be watching to see what you do next." I thought about all the times I'd made myself smaller, quieter, less noticeable to please others. How I'd let Stephen and Victoria make me feel ashamed of taking up space in the world. "Then let's give them something to watch," I said. That night, I started putting the pieces together. Marcus, Diana's records, Sarah's legal expertise, and my own determination. Victoria thought she was writing the end of my story. She didn't realize she'd only written the beginning. But as I worked late into the night at Sarah's dining table, surrounded by Diana's documents and Marcus's technical analysis of the email hacks, my phone lit up with an unknown number. The text message contained just 4 words that made my blood freeze. "Back off, or else." Attached was a photo of me, taken that afternoon outside the cafe with Diana. Someone was watching. The game had changed. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about survival. The threatening text message changed everything. I stared at my phone, Diana's words echoing in my mind. "Victoria destroys people." But as I studied the photo of me outside the cafe, something clicked. The angle, the timing. This wasn't just surveillance. This was amateur work. Probably one of Victoria's hired people trying to scare me. I'd spent too long being scared. Marcus confirmed my suspicions the next morning. "The photo was taken from a parked car," he said, pointing to reflections in the cafe window. "And whoever sent it used a burner phone, but they accessed the Hamilton corporate Wi-Fi to send it. Sloppy. Can you trace it?" "Already did. The phone belongs to Richard, Stephen's cousin." I remembered Stephen's recording, Richard and Victoria laughing about their manipulation. "Perfect," I said. "Let's use that." Over the next 3 days, we set our plan in motion. Sarah filed preliminary legal paperwork, not a lawsuit, just enough to put Victoria on notice. Diana activated her network of Victoria's other victims, each with their own story of destruction. Marcus worked his technical magic, following the digital breadcrumbs Victoria had left in her wake. But my real focus was the Hamilton Foundation Gala, Victoria's crown jewel event, where she showcased her power to New York's elite. The invitation list included CEOs, socialites, and media personalities. This year's theme, Transforming Lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was in Sarah's kitchen, reviewing our strategy, when Stephen called. I hadn't spoken to him since his confession. "Phoebe," he sounded breathless. "Mother knows you're planning something. She's hired private security for the gala. She's talking about having you arrested if you come near the building." "Is that concern I hear, Stephen?" A pause. "I know I have no right to worry about you. But you don't know what she's capable of." "Actually, I do. Thanks to Diana." His sharp intake of breath told me he hadn't known I'd contacted her. "Phoebe, please, just tell me what you're planning. Maybe I can help." "Like you helped at the wedding?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair." "No, it was completely fair." He sighed. "I've been in therapy, you know, trying to understand why I let her control me for so long. Why I hurt the one person who truly loved me." The vulnerability in his voice tugged at my heart. But I remembered Diana's warning. Victoria's greatest weapon is her son's guilt. She's used it to manipulate him for years. "I appreciate you warning me, Stephen, but I need to do this my way." After hanging up, I turned to Sarah and Diana, who'd been listening. "He'll tell her about the call." Diana nodded. "She'll be expecting you to make a scene at the gala now, to try to publicly embarrass her. Then let's give her exactly what she expects." I pulled out my laptop, opening the files Marcus had recovered. Just not in the way she thinks. The next evening, I stood in front of Sarah's full-length mirror, hardly recognizing myself. Gone was the insecure woman who'd tried to shrink herself to fit Stephen's ideal. Instead, I wore a deep blue gown that hugged every curve I'd once tried to hide. My hair was styled in confident waves, my makeup subtle but striking. "The car's here," Sarah announced, then paused, seeing me. "Phoebe, you look powerful." Diana handed me a small clutch containing everything we needed. "Remember, timing is everything. Victoria will have security watching every entrance." "They'll be watching the wrong thing," I replied, thinking of Marcus, already in position. As our car approached the Hamilton Foundation building, I saw the media circus outside. Victoria had ensured my wedding humiliation went viral. Now that same publicity would work against her. My phone buzzed with another threat. "Last warning, turn around." I smiled, sending back a single reply. "Watch me." But as I stepped out of the car, ready to set our plan in motion, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Through the glass doors of the venue, I could see Victoria Hamilton speaking to a group of reporters. And she was smiling. That same triumphant smile she'd worn at my wedding. She knew something I didn't. Before I could process what this meant, Sarah grabbed my arm. "Em," she whispered, showing me her phone. "We have a problem. A big one." On the screen was a breaking news alert that changed everything. Hamilton Foundation announces major acquisition. Social media platform. Purchase raises questions about digital privacy and corporate control. Suddenly, Marcus's frantic text from an hour ago made sense. Something's blocking me. I've never seen security like this. Victoria hadn't just been playing defense. She'd bought the very tools we were planning to use against her. As I stood there, cameras flashing around me, I realized our carefully laid plan had just imploded. But looking at Victoria's smug face through those glass doors, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because now I knew exactly what I had to do. And it would require no evidence, no complicated schemes, and no digital warfare. Just the truth. And my voice. What I did next would shock everyone, especially Victoria Hamilton. I walked straight through those glass doors, past the security guards who moved to stop me but hesitated at my confident stride. The cameras followed, live streaming my entrance to thousands. Victoria's smile faltered as I approached the podium where she stood with the reporters. "Mrs. Hamilton," I said, my voice carrying through the suddenly quiet room. "Thank you for making my wedding video go viral. It's given me the platform I need." She recovered quickly, her society smile firmly in place. "Miss Watson, I'm afraid you'll have to leave. This is a private event." "Private? But you've made my life so public." I turned to face the cameras directly. "My name is Phoebe Watson, and I have a story to tell about the Hamilton family. Not about their money or their power, but about their fear." Victoria's hand gripped her champagne glass tightly. "Security. They can remove me," I continued calmly, "but they can't remove the truth. The truth about a mother so afraid of losing control that she faked terminal cancer to manipulate her son. The truth about a woman so terrified of genuine relationships that she destroys anyone who threatens her carefully constructed world." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Stephen, standing near the back, stepped forward but stopped when I met his eyes. "You see, Victoria Hamilton taught me something valuable," I said, watching her face pale. "She taught me that when you strip everything away from someone, their job, their money, their reputation, you leave them with only one thing, their voice. And mine is no longer for sale." I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. "You took my savings, thinking it would silence me. But what you didn't know is that I'd already donated every penny to establish a foundation, the Truth and Dignity Foundation, supporting victims of corporate and social bullying. And thanks to your viral video, we've raised over $2 million in 3 days." Victoria laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You expect people to believe? They already do." Diana's voice rang out as she stepped forward. "Because I'm the first board member, and I'm not alone." One by one, other women stood up from the crowd, all former victims of Victoria's machinations, each successful, strong, and no longer afraid. "You see, Mrs. Hamilton, you've spent years making people smaller to make yourself feel bigger. But here's what you never understood. We were never small. You were." Victoria's composed facade cracked. "How dare you come here and spread these lies? I'll sue you for defamation. I'll—" "Go ahead," I interrupted. "Every legal threat, Every attempt to silence us will only prove our point. Your son's recording of your cancer deception is already trending. Hamilton Truth is outperforming Chuck Wedding Bet. The very social media platform you just bought? Its users are sharing their own stories of bullying and manipulation. You've created exactly what you feared most, a movement you can't control. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, social media notifications pinging on hundreds of phones. Through it all, Victoria stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Stephen pushed through the crowd, stopping beside me. "Mother," he said quietly, "it's over." Her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful!" She raised her hand, champagne glass still clutched in it. But before she could finish her motion or her sentence, something extraordinary happened. Richard, her trusted nephew, stepped forward and caught her wrist. "Enough, Aunt Victoria. I recorded everything you said about the wedding bet, about using Stephen, about all of it." He looked at me. "I'm done being part of this." Victoria's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent room like an exclamation point on the end of her reign. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the deepest wounds can lead to the most unexpected healing. Because in that moment of Victoria's ultimate defeat, I saw something in her eyes I never expected to recognize. The same fear and shame I'd felt at my wedding. And despite everything, that recognition would change both our lives in ways I never could have imagined. The week after the gala, I found myself sitting across from Victoria Hamilton in a small private room at the Belmore Rehabilitation Center. She'd checked herself in 3 days after her public breakdown, citing exhaustion. But we both knew the real reason. "Why did you come?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Without her designer clothes and perfect makeup, she looked smaller, older, human. "Because you asked," I replied simply. The invitation had surprised everyone, especially Stephen. She stared out the window for a long moment. I was 14 when my father first told me I was too fat to be loved. He controlled every bite I ate, weighed me every morning, and announced the results to our household staff. Her hands trembled slightly. The day I finally became thin enough for his approval was the day I learned that control equals love. I sat silently, watching this woman who had tried to destroy me reveal her own destruction. "I saw myself in you," she continued. "At the first dinner Stephen brought you to. The way you cut your food into tiny pieces. How you checked his expression before taking each bite. I hated you for it. For showing me what I'd become. A bully," I said quietly. She flinched but nodded. "Worse, I became my father." She turned to face me fully. "I've hurt so many people, Phoebe. Not just you. Not just Diana. There are dozens more. I know. They're all part of the foundation now. The foundation." She gave a bitter laugh. "You did what I never could. You turned pain into power, into purpose." She reached for her purse, pulling out a thick envelope. "This is a list. Names, dates, every person I've targeted over the past 30 years. With it, you could destroy what's left of the Hamilton name." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "That's not what the foundation is about." "Then what is it about?" "Healing. Breaking the cycle." I leaned forward. "Victoria, you don't need to become a better bully. You need to heal the bullied girl inside you." Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first real emotion I'd ever seen from her. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. That's why you're here." I stood, placing the envelope on the table between us. "The foundation is launching a new program next month. Support groups for both victims and reformed bullies. When you're ready, there's a place for you." She wiped her eyes. "Why would you offer me help? After everything?" "Because carrying hate is exhausting. And because—" I smiled slightly. "Someone once told me that this isn't the end of my story. It's not the end of yours either." As I turned to leave, she called out, "Phoebe? Stephen? He's different now, in therapy. He talks about you." I paused at the door. "We're all different now." Outside, Stephen was waiting in the parking lot. He'd driven his mother here a week ago and had been visiting daily. When he saw me, he straightened from where he'd been leaning against his car. "How is she?" he asked. Breaking. Healing. Both. I studied his face, thinner now, with shadows under his eyes. How are you? Learning who I am without her influence. It's harder than I thought it would be. He took a step toward me, then stopped himself. Phoebe? I know I have no right to ask, but don't, I said gently. Not yet. He nodded, understanding. The foundation. It's amazing what you're building. It is. And it's bigger than just your mother or us. People need to know they're not alone. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Hamilton Industries Board announces major restructuring. I smiled, knowing Victoria had finally made the right choice. But another message followed immediately after. An anonymous email that would force me to question everything I thought I knew about forgiveness and redemption. The anonymous email contained a video file. I sat in my car, hands shaking as I pressed play. It showed Victoria Hamilton, 20 years younger, sitting in what looked like a therapist's office. I can't stop, she sobbed in the video. Every time I see a woman who reminds me of myself at that age, happy, confident in her own skin, I have this overwhelming urge to destroy her, to make her as small as my father made me. The timestamp showed this was recorded long before she met me, before Diana, before countless others. And your son? The therapist's voice asked off camera. Stephen, I'm terrified I'm doing to him what my father did to me, using love as a weapon, but I don't know how to stop. The video ended with a message. Found this in Richard's old files. She tried to get help once. Maybe she deserves a second chance. Jay. I sat there for a long time, processing. Stephen had sent this, showing me a side of his mother even he probably hadn't known existed until recently. My phone rang. Diana. The board meeting just ended, she said without preamble. Victoria's stepping down permanently, but there's more. She's transferring controlling interest of the Hamilton Foundation to the Truth and Dignity Foundation. I closed my eyes, understanding the magnitude of this decision. She's giving up everything. Phoebe, Diana hesitated. There's something else you need to know. I've been doing some digging into Victoria's past. Her father, the things he did, it's worse than we thought. I know. I just saw a video. No, it's not just that. He didn't just abuse her emotionally. He used to lock her in the basement when she gained weight. For days. There are police reports, but they were buried. Money talked back then, just like now. My chest tightened. The basement. Suddenly, Victoria's claustrophobia at the gala made sense. How she'd avoided the elevator, taking stairs despite her heels. She's not asking for forgiveness, Diana continued. The foundation transfer. She's trying to make sure her father's legacy of abuse dies with her. I thought about the support group I'd mentioned to Victoria, about cycles of abuse and the courage it takes to break them. Send me the police reports, I said. And Diana? Thank you. For everything. That evening, I made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Rebecca, the foundation's head counselor. I need to modify the support group program, I explained. Make it more comprehensive, trauma-informed. The second call was to Stephen. I got the video, I said when he answered. Phoebe, meet me at Riverside Park, our old spot. There's something I need to say to you in person. An hour later, we sat on our bench, watching the sunset over the Hudson. The same bench where we'd had our first real conversation 2 years ago. I'm not ready to forgive either of you, I said finally. Maybe I never will be fully, but I understand now. About patterns we inherit. About how hurt people. I'm trying to break my patterns, he said quietly. In therapy, I'm learning how much of my behavior came from watching Mom, from thinking love meant control. I know, I'm breaking patterns too, learning that taking up space in the world isn't a sin. That being strong doesn't mean being cruel. He turned to look at me. You were always strong. I was too weak to see it. No, I shook my head. You were too broken to see it. There's a difference. As the sun disappeared behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the park, I made a decision that would change not just my life, but the lives of countless others. A decision about healing, about breaking cycles, and about the true meaning of transformation. But first, there was one more truth I needed to face. and it would come from the most unexpected source. The truth came from Richard, of all people. He asked to meet at a quiet coffee shop a week after Victoria's admission to rehab. "I need to confess something," he said, looking haunted. The bet wasn't Victoria's idea originally. It was mine. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "What?" "I was jealous of Stephen. Always have been. When he told me about you, how happy you made him." He stared into his cup. "I suggested the bet to Victoria, knowing she'd make it worse, knowing she'd turn it into a crusade." "Why tell me this now?" "Because I saw what you did at the gala, not just exposing the truth, but offering healing, even to Victoria." He pulled out a USB drive. "This contains everything. Every manipulation I've been part of. Every person I've helped Victoria target. I want to make it right." I studied him. "You're not just feeling guilty. Something else happened." "My daughter," he whispered. "She's 12. Last week I found her crying in her room. Kids at school were bullying her about her weight." His voice cracked. "She asked me if she was too fat to be loved." I heard Victoria's father in those words. I heard myself. The Foundation's first support group meeting was scheduled for that evening. "Come," I said. "Bring your daughter. It's time to break the cycle." That night, I stood before a room of 30 people, victims and perpetrators of bullying, sitting together. Victoria was there, looking nervous but determined. Stephen sat in the back. Richard and his daughter held hands in the front row. "We all have a story," I began. "Mine started at a wedding that never happened. But it's not about the wedding anymore. It's about the patterns we inherit, the pain we carry, and the choice we all have to break the chain." Over the next 2 hours, people shared their stories. A woman who'd been bullied into an eating disorder now counseled teens. A former corporate bully confronted his own childhood trauma. Victoria, voice shaking, spoke about her father. But the most powerful moment came from Richard's daughter, Emma. "Last week I was the girl being bullied," she said. "Tonight I'm sitting next to one of the girls who bullied me. And we're both crying, both healing, both learning that we're more than our worst moments." The True in Dignity Foundation expanded rapidly after that night. Victoria's resources, combined with the viral attention from the gala, created a platform for real change. We launched programs in schools, workplaces, and online communities. Stephen and I continued our separate healing journeys, meeting occasionally at our riverside bench to share progress. The love we'd had was gone, transformed into something different, a shared commitment to breaking the cycles that had broken us. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I stood in front of a mirror again. This time, I wasn't in a wedding dress trying to be smaller. I wore a power suit preparing to give a keynote speech at the Foundation's first national conference. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Ready to change the world?" I smiled at my reflection. At every curve, every inch of space I occupied unapologetically. "No," I typed back. "Ready to help people change themselves." As I walked onto the stage, facing thousands of people ready to confront their own stories of hurt and healing, I realized something profound. The biggest act of defiance against those who try to make us small isn't fighting back. It's growing so large in spirit that their smallness becomes irrelevant. And that's when I knew the truth that would define not just my story, but the stories of countless others looking for a way forward. 1 year to the day after my failed wedding, I stood in front of another mirror. This time, I was preparing for a television interview. My foundation's work had caught the attention of major media outlets. "The woman who turned wedding humiliation into a movement," the headlines read. But they missed the real story. My phone buzzed with a photo from Victoria. Her first selfie ever, she claimed. She was at the Foundation's newest center, leading a support group for mothers and daughters healing from generational trauma. Her smile was genuine, matching the pride in her message. 25 families started therapy today. Stephen sent a text moments later. "Dad finally agreed to join the men's program. Thank you." His father, the man who taught Victoria that love meant control, was finally confronting his own demons. Sarah appeared in my office doorway. "They're ready for you." As I walked to the studio, I thought about how far we'd all come. Richard's daughter Emma had started a peer support program at her school, now implemented in 50 other locations. Diana had become the foundation's legal director, turning her pain into protection for others. The interviewer's first question caught me off guard. "Do you regret what happened at your wedding?" I looked directly into the camera, knowing somewhere other people struggling with their own pain would be watching. "No," I said firmly, because that moment taught me something vital. Our worst experiences don't define us. How we transform them does. And have you forgiven them, Stephen? Victoria? Forgiveness isn't a destination, I explained. It's a journey. Some days I'm still angry. Other days, I'm grateful for the strength I found. But what matters isn't forgiveness. It's breaking the cycles that hurt us all. After the interview, I visited our newest support center. A woman approached me, clutching a familiar-looking wedding dress. "I was going to burn it," she said, tears in her eyes. "My fiancé left me because I got too fat during wedding planning. But then I saw your story." She donated the dress to our Transform Pain into Power art installation, a wall of wedding dresses, each representing a woman who'd found her voice after being told to make herself smaller. That evening, I sat at my riverside bench, reading letters from people we'd helped. A shadow fell across the page. "Mind if I join you?" Stephen asked. I gestured to the empty space. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. "I'm moving to Chicago," he said finally, "taking the Foundation's program national." I nodded, feeling a gentle closure. "You've come a long way." "We all have." He smiled. "Mom asked me to give you this." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo I recognized from our early dating days, Stephen and me laughing at a picnic, completely unself-conscious. On the back, Victoria had written, "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." As Stephen left, my phone lit up with a message from a new support group member. "I thought I was alone. You showed me I'm not." I looked out over the river, thinking about that desperate bride a year ago, trying to shrink herself for love. She wasn't gone. She was transformed. Her pain had become purpose. Her shame had become strength. And her story had become a bridge for others to cross from darkness into light. Because sometimes, the most beautiful transformations come not from changing who we are, but from finally, fully, embracing it. That night, I added a final entry to my journal. The truth is, we all take up space in this world. The only question is whether we'll apologize for it or celebrate it. Today, I choose to celebrate. Not just for me, but for every person who's ever been told they're too much or not enough. Your story isn't over. Your pain can become purpose. Your voice matters. And you, exactly as you are, deserve to be seen, heard, and loved. This isn't just my story anymore. It's ours. And we're just getting started.